What's up, everybody? Hey, Ryan, how you doing? Hope everybody's having a good afternoon. I just wanted to jump on because we usually do our Holler Hour Tuesday and Thursdays, and didn't want to sleep on it this week, even though we don't have a guest. We got a few things we could talk about, catch up with you guys, hear how you felt Holler Fest went. I thought it went great. Really appreciated everybody jumping on with us, commenting. The highlights are available on our social media. We also put out an email. They're in there, but really enjoyed it. Love to hear some thoughts from you guys about how you felt it went, what you'd like to see differently next year. I'm hoping we're going to do it in person. I think it'll be a good time. Really appreciate you guys supporting that. As always, follow all the hollers throughout the state. Check those out. And let's talk about some stuff that's going on today. Be interested to hear what you guys are thinking about. But the things that we saw today were this Joey Hensley story. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but we got a lot of crazy characters in Tennessee. Joey Hensley's right at the top. This dude is a representative out of Hohenwald, and he is now in trouble for his conflicting testimony about how long he was sleeping with his cousin and prescribing her opioids. Joey Hensley, folks, he is also divorced 4 times, and he is one of the staunchest anti-LGBT folks in the entire legislature. So the wild part about that is part of the testimony that came out about his relationship with his cousin, and I'm not kink shaming here. I'm not judging anybody for what they choose to do in their sex life, but it's important to point out this dude sponsors all the anti-LGBT legislation. And in the deposition of his cousin who he was sleeping with, it says that his second cousin, his nurse, and his longtime patient used a vibrator in his ass. That's in the Nashville scene. And then they go on to show the deposition talking about buying the vibrator and butt cream and all this other stuff. And I know it's kind of vulgar to say all this, but I think it's important to point out the hypocrisy of these guys when they go after LGBT folks. And here he is, having his cousin, who he illegally prescribed meds to, use a vibrator on him. So Joey Hensley is a name to remember. It's always hard when we tweet about Joey Hensley. We only get whatever it is, 240 characters now, 280 characters. It's always hard to include all the trash that fills up Joey Hensley's bio in our tweets. Like, we always have to add another tweet, post the link. Yeah, we will post the link, and we did tweet about it. So check that out on our Twitter page. That's Joey Hensley, out of Hohenwald. Just ridiculous. And there's actually an even more absurdly hypocritical thing about Joey's life that we just haven't talked about out of regard for somebody else that it involves. But anyway, he's a disaster. Any relation to Paul Hensler, Dad? No, I don't think. Maybe. Who knows? Another story that we talked about in our email blast today, which if you are not subscribed to get our email blasts, please do that, is Jeremy Faison. He's the House caucus chair for the Republicans. He posted this picture of what I would assume is a constituent of his. Maybe he was in Nashville, who knows, but wearing a mask, just trolling a regular voter, a state legislator who's the House caucus chair, taking a picture of somebody and putting her on blast on social media saying, I bet she voted for Bernie last year, presumably because she's wearing a mask in a car, in a convertible. And whatever you think about masks, nobody should be backing him on photo shaming random people who knows. He doesn't know anything about that person's life. He doesn't know if she's sick. He doesn't know if she's got allergies. And it turns out somebody that follows either him or us, I'm not sure who, actually did know who that woman was and said that she was a caregiver for the elderly. So Jeremy Faison is a straight up bully. And, he threw basically a tantrum after this on Twitter, talking about how, the left doesn't understand satire. Satire is funny. This isn't funny. And the biggest problem is not the left not understanding satire. It's Republicans not understanding what comedy is. Like, you just don't get comedy. Comedy is not bullying. Bullying is not comedy. That's something that Jeremy Faison doesn't seem to realize, and his party needs to understand also. Bullying is not comedy, Jeremy Faison. That's an important thing. By the way, I finally figured out how to play background music. So I'm not sure if you guys like the background music or don't like it, but I decided to use it today just because I finally figured out how to do it. So hopefully it's not annoying you too much. I'm sure my dad probably has something to say about it because he's got something to say about most things. Today, Governor Lee is in Memphis talking about the infrastructure bill. Oh, he's talking about the bridge that is cracked in Memphis, which we talked about last time. And I just want to show you guys kind of his press conference that he just gave. Theron Bond, a Memphis woman, was in Memphis for this press conference, and she asked him the right question, which is, how can you and Bill Hagerty, Senator Bill Hagerty, be complaining about the federal response to infrastructure and the lack of urgency when you vote against Biden's infrastructure bill and everything else that he does? So they're literally sitting there complaining about federal spending on infrastructure while they vote against these things and call everything socialism. It's wild. So Darren asked the right question, and I'm going to play that right now.
About 6 weeks ago, you criticized President Joe Biden's infrastructure plan and said that federal funding was not the proper strategy for funding roads and bridges. Have you changed your mind now that federal funding has helped facilitate the repair of this bridge?
Actually, what we need is federal funding from the federal government that is focused on roads and bridges. As you know, the American Rescue Plan expressly prohibits the use of those federal dollars on roads and bridges. And the proposed infrastructure plan includes only about 5.6% of the entire federal relief package.
Okay, so what he's doing there is he is, let me know if you guys can hear that. He is intentionally confusing the issue. So she asks about federal spending, and he says, oh, the American Rescue Plan prohibited the use of money on roads and bridges. He's acting like, and the American Rescue Plan is the COVID relief package. So yes, that wasn't for roads and bridges. She asks about roads and bridges, and he talks about that plan prohibits spending on roads and bridges. He's just confusing the issue. It didn't like go out of its way to prohibit it. It just wasn't for that. And now they have a plan that's for that, the American Jobs Plan, that they're against. And he's saying, oh, there's only 5.9% allocated to roads and bridges, but a lot of it's to broadband, a lot of it's to, fixing up other things. And then, yes, there's like $400 billion that's supposed to go towards caretaking and, human infrastructure, they call it, which sure, we can have an okay, decently good faith conversation about whether or not that should count as infrastructure. But the bottom line of the question that Theron is asking is right, which is, how can you be against federal spending on so many things and then sit there and complain that there's not enough urgency or that there's not enough federal spending on roads and bridges? Like, it's such political mental gymnastics that they try to pull here, and they really need to be called on it. So I think it's important to call them out, and I'm glad that Theron made the time to go there and do that, because these guys are really full of it. When push comes to shove, their policies hurt people, and we're seeing that again, and especially with this unemployment stuff. And so what we've now had here in Tennessee, where we have one of the lowest unemployment benefits in the whole country, they just canceled the $300 federal subsidy, and they're also going to cut the weeks in half long after the federal subsidy lapses. So they're attacking unemployed people, and state level Republicans have been going out of their way to say, oh, we don't think you're lazy. It's not because you're lazy. Well, somebody didn't give the memo to DeKalb County Commissioner Jerry Adcock, because underneath the TN Senate Dems post about how Republicans are exaggerating job openings, Adcock says, if the government, he says, Tenco still has jobs. One of the cabinet shops is looking for people. Oh, so one of the cabinet shops is looking for people. Hard to get people off welfare if the government takes from working people and gives to lazy asses. So there are Republicans all over who think if you're unemployed, you are a lazy ass. But there are actual people that this is affecting and impacting. And Representative Gloria Johnson has sent us some of the messages she's been getting. This is a Tennessean over in Knoxville saying, my husband unemployed, but the 300 is taken away. My family will suffer greatly. My heart hurts when I'm on Facebook and see so many hate-filled comments saying that people are unemployment are lazy. I'm far from lazy. I worked more in 2020 than I ever have. I loved it. I went to work. It's not my fault I was laid off. I had nothing to do with that. Companies are still laying off. So that's one woman. Another woman writes, or man, I'm not sure. I hate writing you on this platform. Couldn't find your email address. I'm writing you because I'm literally panicking over Lee's decision to end all pandemic unemployment and the extra 300. I was laid off from a good high-paying management job. I thought I would retire from there, but I was wrong. I worked at a local company and made sanitizer, disinfectant. We were busy. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. You can imagine how busy we were. I've been on unemployment since January. We applied for several positions, haven't heard a word back. So there's another person who is suffering. These are real people that are trying to work. Here's another one. Absolutely petrified about losing my unemployment. Single mom already struggling. This will be what breaks me. I don't know how my daughter and I will survive this. Thank you for actually caring about us, because I will say there are some representatives that care about their people. Gloria Johnson is one of them. And because of that, people appreciate her. And it costs her, I think, in terms of what she can actually push forward in the legislature. It certainly cost her in her office size. She got put in a tiny office. But people appreciate it. Here's another one. Thank you for responding. I don't mind if you use my story. One of my friends was laid off last week. He literally just won custody of his kids. Skip down. Governor Lee needs to know we're hardworking middle-class Tennesseans and need help. Please use my story, and I pray something good comes from it. These are real people, real messages, not just numbers. And so as Governor Lee and the Republicans slash unemployment benefits while bragging about how much money we have in our rainy day fund, $2 billion, close to $2 billion now, as they give themselves raises. They just voted raises for themselves. And as they take in over $6 million in PPP loans that we've now learned have gone to Republican House legislators and their companies, they're attacking these people who are just hardworking Tennesseans. It's sad, and their priorities are completely out of whack. This shows that we are in the bottom 5 in terms of what we actually give to people on unemployment. So as we cut it in half, we're already at the bottom 5. So these are the effects of a Republican supermajority that doesn't value government, that doesn't think government is the answer to anything except what they like and what helps them. And low taxes. I mean, it's nice to have low taxes, sure, but that means you can't pay for things. That's how that works. And a lot of what we do pay for, we get from the federal government. We're one of the most federally dependent states in the country. We say that as much as we possibly can here because it's true. And so around and around we go. We have a very haves and have-nots state. And the have-nots are who get the shaft whenever they want to make a political point. So a lot of things have happened because of the unemployment situation. We've seen these companies are now paying more. A lot of wage hikes going on, which Republicans see as a horror story, but really is long overdue. Wages have not really gone up in a very long time. And so these are possibly good things, and nobody really knows how this is going to shake out. I think there's probably a good faith argument to be made that, I get it. Logically speaking, $300 a month or a week more from the federal government seems like, okay, some people might be choosing to stay home. I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, but bosses do, and so they're having their Republican friends do their bidding for them. But assuming we don't even concede that point, which, because I don't concede that point, I haven't seen the numbers that back that up. But the slashing of unemployment benefits in half in terms of the weeks that will start in 2 years, long after the federal subsidy is lapsed, that is indefensible. These are people who are saying, please don't cut $300 out of what I'm getting. But at that point, it's going to be people who are basically getting cut off completely after 12 weeks of looking for work. So this is going to force people to do things that they normally wouldn't have done. It's going to put people in a bad spot. And to me, this is not the thing that we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on expanding Medicaid so people aren't worried that if they take a job, they're going to make too much to keep their health coverage. Pretty simple. Daycare. I have 2 kids. I know it's expensive. Luckily, we can handle that, but there are people who can't. And for those people, sometimes taking that job to go make whatever, even $15 an hour, doesn't financially make sense if you're going to have to turn around and give it all to your child's daycare and also not be able to take care of your kids. So these are the things that we need to focus on. Daycare, raising the wages, healthcare. That's where the focus should be. A couple other things, since I hope you guys are hanging in there with me, enjoying the background music. This is just want to play this Joe Rogan clip because it's so ridiculous. Joe Rogan said something this week that it's something you hear a lot of, and it's just Joe Rogan being Joe Rogan, but it does sort of make you go, there are people out there who think like this. Here's Joe Rogan on woke culture.
You can never be woke enough. That's the problem. It keeps going. It keeps going further and further and further down the line. And if you get to the point where you capitulate, where you agree to all these demands, it will eventually get to straight white men are not allowed to talk.
Right.
Okay. And then he goes on, and then they won't be allowed to go outside. This thing where straight white men feel so aggrieved because suddenly we're not treated as the authorities on every topic. That guy's got $100 million podcast deal, and he's worried that white guys aren't going to be allowed to talk. I mean, it's just so absurd on its face. And I guess just as a final thought here for the day, I know that some people have problems with woke issues and over wokeness. To me, being woke is a good thing. Being awake is a good thing. There may be times where it goes too far. Yes, but better to be awake than asleep. And for guys like Joe Rogan to sit around worrying that white people won't be allowed to talk, it's not that we're not allowed to talk. It's just on some things, we are not the authority, and we need to shut the fuck up and listen. I mean, when it comes to issues that affect women, we need to listen to women. When it comes to issues that affect black people, we need to listen to black people. When it comes to issues that affect immigrants, minorities, that kind of thing, gay people, yes, sometimes we need to shut up and listen. Doesn't mean we can't talk, but we do need to shut up and listen sometimes. And I don't think we do that enough. We're doing it more, though, because we're being forced to. I'm Jewish. I do think there are some things where I'm able to say some stuff that someone who isn't Jewish wouldn't be able to say. The messenger matters. And, we may overcorrect here in some ways, and, we can have good faith discussions about certain elements of, society and what's okay and what should be canceled and what shouldn't be. I'm kind of for cancel culture, frankly. I think in some ways that's the only way that we're going to make any progress on this stuff. I'm not going to agree with everything that gets canceled, but, boycotting things and not voting with your voting with your wallet. Like, that's how we make progress. Always have. Boycotts, I mean, Google it. Boycotts are how we move forward. Cancel culture has been with us for a long time. It's just more in our face now because of social media. So Joe Rogan, to me, this was a really embarrassing moment for him. I don't hate everything he does. I'm not a Rogan hater. Like, it's not something that I sit around thinking about, but I thought this one went a little too far. I think Bill Maher does this too, where every single week now he's waxing on and on about the anti-racism and millennials, and it's just a get off my lawn thing. I'm sure I'm going to get some heat from my dad for this because I'm sure he agrees with this, and he's probably still watching. Anyway, appreciate you all for joining me Tuesdays and Thursdays. Cassie has moved on to do other stuff, so I'm going to have guests, but I just want to make sure that we keep this going because I value it. I appreciate you guys joining me, and I will see you on Thursday.